Welcome back to BNG Hockey, where it's always black and gold. Boy, was I wrong when I thought I could work during this year's NHL trade deadline and not miss too much Bruins action, because this year was all about the Bruins. I promise I'm going to get to all the craziness of today in the coming videos, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because those will be out shortly, but I wanted to start off with this trade from last night, because I do have a few thoughts on these players. So let's get started. After last night's loss to the Carolina Hurricanes, the Bruins sent the big boy, Justin Brazeau, to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for old friend Jakub Lauko, forward Marat Khusnutdinov, and a 2026 sixth-round pick that was originally our selection. This is a pretty good trade for a guy I really didn't expect to get that much for. I was thinking like a fourth-round pick in my head, but I'd much rather get two NHL roster players and a pick in exchange for this player. He's a 27-year-old UFA after this season. This year with the Bruins in 57 games, he had 10 goals, 10 assists for a total of 20 points. His entire NHL career is only 76 games where he has 15 goals, 12 assists for a total of 27 points. I think Bruins fans overhyped this guy a little bit. Obviously, you love the size at 6'6". He's a really cool story, the way the Bruins just kind of threw a dart at him, and he ended up being a solid bottom six player. So good for him for working on his game and continuing to grind away after he kind of got buried in the Maple Leaf system. So I do wish him all the best with the Minnesota Wild. I don't think the Bruins are going to re-sign him. It sounds like they really struggled coming to an agreement on a contract, and I'm not too surprised by that, because if he's looking for any kind of money, which I'm sure he is, because at 27 years old, where he hasn't been the best player in the league, this is probably his best chance at a payday, and I don't want the Bruins to go crazy spending money on a guy who gets you 10 goals, and honestly, the way he played this year is probably his ceiling. So we'll see how he does in Minnesota, and I'm very happy about the return, so let's talk about those players. Let's start with the player I'm most excited about in this trade. That's forward Marat Khusnutdinov. He's a 22-year-old left shot centerman who's 5'9". Originally selected in the second round of the 2020 draft, 37th overall by the Minnesota Wild. He played in the KHL before coming over to the NHL, where in his last season, in 49 games, he scored 6 goals, 14 assists for a total of 20 points. This year with the Minnesota Wild, in 57 games, he has 2 goals, 5 assists for a total of 7 points. In his entire NHL career, he's played in 73 games, scoring 3 goals, 8 assists for a total of 11 points. Now, funny story about this player. I was watching him play against the Bruins, and for just a brief second, and I watch a lot of hockey, so I know that Kevin Fiala is very much not a member of the Minnesota Wild, but this guy came in on a rush, and I thought for a split second there that Fiala was still on the team. He was wearing his number, he came through with speed and skill, and I was really impressed. And this was a guy I really never heard of. He doesn't play a ton. He's more of a fourth-line center. But hey, he's got that skill, he's got that pop, he was a second-round pick, and he's still young at only 22 years old. He will be an RFA after this season, currently has a cap hit of $925K, can't see him making much more, might even make less than that if that's possible on his next deal, so I would love it if he fits here in these last couple games for the Bruins, continues to pop like I saw him for that brief second there. He does have speed, a little bit of skill, solid energy guy, and at least he shows up. There are so many guys on this Bruins roster that it doesn't even seem like they play. Like a guy like Cole Koepke, get him off my team. He scored like 2 goals at the beginning of the year and has somehow had a roster spot the rest of the season when he does nothing. I'd much rather give it to a younger guy like this player here at only 22 years old who brings some speed, brings some physicality, and that you notice and might even develop into a better player along the way at a cheap cap hit. So that was a nice throw-in in this deal, and just 1-for-1 I would have done that for Brazeau. I'm not kidding. But then we got a lot more out of this deal, so let's talk about what else we got. Good old Grapes, back with the Bruins. Kind of nice to see. That's a sneaky part of this trade, especially with all the things that the Bruins probably knew they had coming. Obviously, we'll get to those deals. It's kind of nice for the Bruins fans to get a sneaky fan favorite back in return when we lost a lot of our core guys. I know it's not a replacement on the stat sheet, but it's kind of fun to watch, a guy that we can connect to right away while we learn all these other players, and makes it feel a little bit homier, if you will. Jakub Lauko seems to always have loved being a Bruin, still talked about the team even when he was with the Wild, and I think he's going to be a nice fit here. For those of you who need a reminder, he's a 24-year-old, 6'1" winger, originally selected in the 3rd round of the 2018 draft, 77th overall by your Boston Bruins. His last season with the Bruins, in 60 games, he had 2 goals, 8 assists for a total of 10 points. Again, this isn't a guy who's going to jump at you stats-wise. This year in 38 games with the Wild, he has 3 goals, 3 assists for a total of 6 points. In his NHL career, he's played in 121 games, scoring 9 goals, 14 assists for a total of 23 points. He will also be an RFA at the end of this year, currently has a deal for $787K. I also expect this player to come at a very cheap cap hit on his next contract. I think he likes being a Bruin, especially if it goes well for him in this last stretch, and his buddy Khusnutdinov wants to stick around. That could be a nice young 4th line that brings a lot more speed, and again, I want to see younger players who show up every night. I don't want these middle-of-the-road kind of guys who are just floating around out there. This is a guy I know is going to try. Hopefully he can pop in a few more goals. That would be nice because the Bruins really do need help up front, and you could argue they might have got a little bit worse up front, but you'd like to see some of these players take a step forward, putting some more points on the board with a low cap hit. I think they're going to be able to re-sign both these players. They're RFAs with low cap hits. Give them a couple years. Let them grow into a new 4th line with Mark Kastelik, because that's one of the only players I think's brought it each and every night as well. That's a line that's going to bring physicality, hopefully a little bit more scoring pop since they're adding some speed with these players, and I think they're just going to be fun to watch. I'm excited to see these guys maybe as soon as the next game in Tampa, and I just think it's going to be a better look and feel, and these are 2 really solid players. A great return for a guy in Justin Brazeau, somebody you weren't going to sign, is nothing too special at the NHL level. I think this was a good trade for Sweeney, and you get a late round pick. Who doesn't love a late round pick? You never know if you're going to get a steal, and I think it's a solid trade, and that was just the beginning for Don Sweeney, and we were just getting started. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big like, and there's plenty more videos to come.